Lungo le dice, largo. Para Orsolini, no le llegó la pelota.
Adelante, por eso intentó Mandragora meter el balón así filtrado. Ya su compañero siguió la misma trayectoria, por eso ya no pudo causar más.
Sigue Cook. Tocaron en corto.
También.
Often, the idea that Russia is a threat may have become a part of the media's DNA.
So much of their reporting is anonymous sources. So much of their reporting subsequently turns out to be wrong. And, you know, so much obvious evidence is out there that so far we've seen no evidence of actual collusion. This is almost becoming comical. Anytime something happens that doesn't comport with what the deep state wants you to believe, the answer is, of course, the Russians hacked it.
Well, of all the things to get audiences crowded around the TV, US Senate hearings don't usually feature in their top 10, but the testimony later of former FBI Director Comey about Donald Trump's supposed links to Russia will have millions tuning in. All the details on that after the break.
We may not have as much history as you Brits, but we know something beautiful when we see it. Hi, I'm William Devane, and I want to tell you about one piece of British history that's taken the U.S. by storm. British gold, Britannias, and sovereigns. These beautiful historical coins are completely VAT-free to you Brits. And sovereigns start at just a few £100s. Find out more in the Roslin Guide to Buying Gold. It's free, and it's packed with the history and design of beautiful gold coins.
Call now on 0800 902 0000 for your free copy of the Rosalind Guide to Buying Gold.
There's British coins, of course, plus coins saved from shipwrecks and the Bank of Canada hoard. So do yourself a favor. Get your own copy of the Rosalind Guide to Buying Gold.
For your free Rosalind Guide to Buying Gold, call 0800 902 0000 with no obligation.
Cheers!
Welcome back. Anticipation is building as former FBI Director James Comey prepares to give testimony to the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee over the Trump campaign's supposed contacts with Russia. Comey was recently fired by President Trump, of course, and his hearing later is gaining a huge amount of media attention. Millions of Americans are expected to tune in for this and watch it live a little bit later on. It's going to be carried by all the major U.S. channels. Bars across America are also going to be showing the testimony. Some are even promising free shots every time the U.S. president tweets, so a few people calling in sick for work tomorrow. Schools are affected too. Some teachers are altering lesson plans to discuss it. However, thousands of viewers might end up being disappointed, as RT America's Ed Schultz explains.
I believe that the Trump administration now has the wind at its back, because in the testimony, in a statement that was released tonight by former FBI Director James Comey, that he will testify tomorrow in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I don't think is any more damaging than anything that's been reported so far. Nowhere in his testimony does he say that he believes the president was obstructing justice. He was the top law enforcement official in the country. He draws no conclusion about what kind of pressure the president was putting on him to, quote, stop the investigation on Flynn. That's not the case. He asked him if he could see through it, see past it. He hoped that he could see past it. Well, I believe in a legal sense, it's going to be very hard for those who want to see Donald Trump removed as president to make the case that he was clearly giving a directive, that he was clearly involving himself in an FBI investigation, and he was telling James Comey to stop the investigation into Michael Flynn. I don't think that's how it comes off at all. And I think that the testimony, whereas it's flashy wording in a 7-page statement, I think it falls very short of any type of impeachment talk that may be surfacing on Capitol Hill.
Political activist James O'Keefe is rattling the mainstream media in the United States. He's best known for his undercover investigations with Project Veritas, and now he's got fake news in the crosshairs.
the caucus cards? You should just like hide all that stuff.
It doesn't matter what legal and ethics people say. We need to win this.
Conflict of interest in the lines at Trump rallies.
Project Veritas is known for its secret recordings. Last month, it released more than 100 hours from inside the CNN newsroom.
Meanwhile, the group faces a $1 million lawsuit over accusations it used fraudulent means to get an employee a position in a political consultancy, to steal documents and secretly videotape conversations. James O'Keefe was quick to fire back.
Robert Kramer believes that by suing us, he can intimidate us. I will not be silenced, only over my dead body. In fact, we will be deploying a new batch of freshly trained journalists next week to shine additional light on the cockroaches of the corrupt D.C. establishment. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. We will find out who is funding this lawsuit. We will never stop exposing the truth. We will not back down.
The communications director at Project Veritas says this kind of legal action only helps make their organization stronger.
We expect to get lawsuits all the time because we upset the status quo. We upset the powers to be. But you know what? Every one of these lawsuits just emboldens us. We're bringing on another very large batch of undercover journalists. They'll be starting work next week. And you know what? Bring these lawsuits on, because every time you do, it energizes our base and we get bigger and stronger and bigger and stronger until someday the truth is ultimately going to prevail. We just try to present the truth in the form of video, but we try to throw the truth out there. And there's a long American tradition that the media used to do with respect to undercover video. It doesn't happen anymore.
You're with RT International. I'll update you again in about 35 minutes' time. Watching the Hawks is next, looking at how many lives the war on drugs has claimed in the United States.
Check in to a Now TV Sky Cinema Pass and check out the latest blockbusters, like these. Start your 14-day free trial and stream over 1,000 movies on demand, including the latest big screen hits, as well as all your favourites, all without the whiff of a contract. And with all these, there's a movie for everyone. To start your 14-day free trial of over 1,000 movies with no contract, search Now TV.
Stays just got more rewarding. Book today at bestwestern.co.uk.
Bullion by Post is the UK's #1 online bullion dealer. At Bullion by Post, we aim to make the process of buying gold and silver as easy as possible. You can buy bars and coins and get them delivered discreetly to your door. On our website, our prices are updated every 2 minutes and include free, fully insured delivery. To find out more, call us on 0121 403 3000 or visit us at bullionbypost.co.uk.
What's not to love about a Crocodile garage door? Designed to add style, security and even value to your home. Call Crocodile on 08000 11 2234 and find out just how quick and simple they are to install. You'll love their neat, space-saving design. And it's a doddle to use. But you know what I love? The craftsmanship. It's cracking. It's Crocodile style.
Jump, focus.
Chum, you can concentrate when you're hungry. Eat a Snickers.
Better? Better. You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers. Get some nuts.
Greetings and salutations. The presidential elections of 2016, like a membership in the Jelly of the Month Club, appear to be the gift that keeps on giving the whole year long. This is especially true for anyone politically, looking to shift blame from themselves, excuse irresponsibility, and generally, fan the flames of instability and stupidity. Because without the Clinton-Trump race to the bottom of the Oval Office, the world could have gone on a little longer without the terminology and idea of fake news or the obsession over Russian hacking. Trump is elected president. Russian hacking. FBI Director Comey gets fired. It's fake news. Anything against the Democrats must be fake news. Anything against the Republicans must also be fake news. And now, what was once the soup du jour of excuses here in Washington, D.C., appears to be spreading across the civilized world like a bad fast food chain. Our good friends at CNN are now reporting that according to anonymous U.S. officials, the recent moves by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others in the region to isolate Qatar are in part due to Russian hacking and fake news. Reporting that, quote, U.S. investigators believe Russian hackers breached Qatar's state news agency and planted a fake news report that contributed to a crisis among the U.S.'s closest Gulf allies. U.S. officials say the Russian goal appears to cause rifts among the U.S. and its allies. Fake news, Russian hacking, and anonymous U.S. officials have pretty much become CNN's bread and butter this past year. But interestingly, across the pond, The Guardian reports come to rather different conclusions than CNN and their anonymous U.S. officials. The Guardian writes that, yes, Russian freelance hackers were involved, but were paid to undertake the work on behalf of some other state or individual. Some observers have claimed privately that Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates may have commissioned the hackers. Whoa! So is it the Russians? Is it not the Russians? Is it fake news? Is it not fake news? Is it hacking? Who knows? But we better find out by watching the Hawks.
If you want to know what's going on in your city and your streets, never back down like Tyrell, and the truth is what you seek. To analyze, investigate from the bottom to the top. You speak your mind like Sean Stone, whether they like it or not. I got Tabitha, Miss Wallace, with the wisdom and the pearl. Between the outrage and the evidence, what's going on in this world.
Watching the Hawks, watching the Hawks, watching the Hawks. Listen when they talk.
Welcome everyone to Watching the Hawks. I am Tyrell Ventura.
And I'm Tabitha Wallace.
Boy, oh boy, Tab. Wild stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, are we really surprised at this point? Are we really shocked by the fact that once again, something that's being blasted out on every for-profit news station coast to coast isn't entirely factual when it comes to what's actually going on?
It's amazing. I got to ask you,
how... I don't get shocked by this anymore.
Yeah, how dangerous is it that we live in a world now where everything gets couched in kind of these same two excuses? It's like every news story that people disagree with must be fake news.
Fake news.
You know, every...
Fake. I don't like it.
Yeah, like, you know, it's like now we live in a world where everything must be in some way or another tied back to Russian hacking. Everything. No matter what happens, you know, fly gets in your ointment, gotta be Russian hackers.
And if anyone within Russia or a Russian citizen does anything, then obviously the entire government knew about it. And it was all part of a massive conspiracy to do things like supposedly hack the French election, which, despite the fact that it was a nice talking point and it did well for, you know, political pundits and everything else, it didn't actually happen, because after investigating the leaks from now President Emmanuel Macron's election campaign, the head of the French government's cybersecurity agency says that they found no trace of a notorious Russian hacking group behind the attack. In fact, Guillaume Popard told the AP that the Macron campaign hack, quote, was so generic and simple that it could have practically anyone. Meaning there's these things where this idea that like a phishing scheme and all of this, as if the only people in the whole world who could possibly know how to do it are Russian hackers. No, you can Google it.
Yeah,
Go on Reddit. It takes you, 20 minutes to learn how to do a phishing scheme. You know why? Because you copy and paste it and send an email. That's it.
Which is exactly what happened to our buddy Podesta back in October, November, or October and September. You know, it's interesting because it's like, you know, Qatar's claiming that the hacking operation was designed to discredit their emir, you know, the emir of Qatar, by attributing his remarks in support of Iran and being critical of Donald Trump, and that these fake news items, which were the product of this hack, were then picked up by Saudi Arabia and the UAE news agencies and spread all over, and that's like part of the major reason now why Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and others in the region are like isolating Qatar.
Because they can't be bothered to check a news story before repeating it, because they don't check up on things and see if the facts matter. They just go off.
And that's the thing that gets me.
I mean, that's a little unsettling to begin with. That your whole basis for an embargo and putting all of these people at risk and trying to start a war is, well, I read something 6 paragraphs down that I didn't like.
Right, and the thing that drives me nuts is that's like the same excuse that Comey used last year when he decided to drop the investigation into Hillary Clinton and all that. Well, I read this story, and then they might say something, and it was Russian who planted the story, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's really driving me nuts, because it's like, okay, either everybody in government and the media just has to like what, admit that like none of them do any homework, none of them check to see if a story is real or not, and they make all their decisions off of like a whim. Like, oh, I feels good at the time, but maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just dumb about it to think there are smart people in government around the world.
If you spent more time on a 7-person panel screaming about this for 20 minutes, you might understand it a little better, then you might get it.
I might. Let's also remember that Qatar is home to the largest U.S. military base in the Gulf.
This is where there's going to be a major problem.
Yes.
They are allies.
And the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, specifically wants Qatar to sever its ties with Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood and the Palestinian group, the Hamas in Palestine, and Iran. It also wants them to close news outlets that are critical of Gulf monarchies, such as the Qatar-funded Al Jazeera.
So what it is, we don't want you to talk, and United Arab Emirates has made, they're putting people in jail for, they're saying up to 15 years just for saying something critical. But Qatar's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's not look at these countries that we're having and their governments. If they're acting like that toward another government, imagine how they treat their own people.
Exactly.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions recently announced his plans to reinvigorate the war on drugs here in the United States. In a highly controversial memo released last month, the Attorney General, who may or may not be from Mordor, brought back mandatory minimums for drug crimes after instructing federal prosecutors to pursue the most severe penalties possible for any crime. But a startling new statistic has many wondering if reigniting the drug war and harsh criminal penalties is really going to change anything. Because according to preliminary data compiled by the New York Times, the number of U.S. drug overdoses in 2016 reached a heartbreaking and record-breaking 59,000. RT's Ashley Banks has more.
Close to 65,000 people died from drug overdoses in the U.S. in 2016. That's according to data the New York Times collected from state health departments and medical examiners across the nation. Although the Center for Disease Control and Prevention said it won't be able to finalize those numbers until December, it is clear that drug overdoses are the leading cause of death in the states. Out of the 50 states, California, Florida, and Ohio have the highest number of drug overdose deaths. In 2015, Ohio led the nation in drug overdoses, and in 2016, the number of victims of unintentional drug overdoses exceeded 4,000 people in the state. Oftentimes, prescription painkillers or heroin are laced with a very potent synthetic opioid called fentanyl. We spoke with Dr. Lewis Nelson, who practices at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School.
If you took in volume the same amount of fentanyl that you would take when you used heroin, you would die. Right? Because there's so much more in that line or in that amount of fentanyl than there would be if it was heroin or morphine. That it would be lethal to almost everybody that took it. So you have to use a lot less. And that's where people get into trouble. Because they're used to using a certain volume, and now they use that same volume. Even if they say, oh, it's potent, I'll cut it in half. Well, now they're only taking 50 times as much. But it's still a lot more than they should be taking. It's still lethal to almost everybody that takes it.
Just over the weekend, a 1-year-old boy in Ohio died a few days after overdosing on opioids. At this time, it's not exactly clear what happened. Meanwhile, the state of Ohio is now suing 5 big drug companies